Deep within a dense, uncharted forest, ancient magical energy hums silently through the massive ancient trees. In this harsh world, a person's entire societal value is strictly determined by their innate magical capabilities. Those born completely devoid of magic are hunted down relentlessly by the authorities to preserve the purity of society. Far away from the ruthless cities, a small, secluded wooden cabin sits peacefully in a sun-drenched forest clearing. Inside the cabin's modest kitchen, a kind-hearted elderly man carefully prepares a batch of fresh, sweet cream puffs. Out in the backyard, a young boy named Mash relentlessly pumps a colossal iron barbell up and down with terrifying speed. Despite his incredible physical build, Mash possesses a completely smooth, unmarked face, lacking the mandatory magical lines. Regro, his adoptive father, steps outside to fondly watch the boy easily shatter his own physical limits day after day. Mash finishes his final set, completely unbothered by the crushing weight, and immediately asks for his favorite dessert. The two share a quiet, peaceful lunch inside, safe within the hidden sanctuary they have built over many years. Regro reminds Mash once again to never venture into the nearby city alone, as his lack of marks would mean immediate death. Mash simply nods his head while absent-mindedly balancing 3 cream puffs on top of each other with perfect precision. Later that afternoon, driven by an overwhelming craving for a rare cream puff variety, Mash quietly slips out into the woods. He enters the bustling magical city, his plain brown cloak tightly wrapped around his head to obscure his unmarked face. At the local bakery, Mash successfully purchases the prized cream puff and bites into it with immense satisfaction. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind sweeps across the crowded street, violently blowing Mash's heavy hood completely off his head. The surrounding citizens freeze in utter horror as they realize a magicless abomination is standing right in their midst. A corrupt magic police officer named Terry spots the commotion and immediately draws his glowing magical wand with a cruel smirk. Before the officer can even utter a single spell, Mash casually walks past him, completely ignoring the blatant threat. Infuriated by the utter lack of respect, Terry demands Mash's immediate arrest, attracting the attention of his superior officer. Watching from a nearby balcony, an elite magic police captain named Brad Coleman narrows his eyes in cold calculation. Sensing the imminent danger, Mash uses his incredible leg strength to sprint back into the safety of the dense woods. Back at the cabin, Regro paces around anxiously, instantly realizing what has happened when he sees Mash's state. Suddenly, the reinforced wooden door of the cabin is completely blasted inward by a violent explosion of purple magical energy. Brad Coleman steps through the thick smoke, flanked by heavy magic enforcers, a condescending smirk plastered across his face. Regro immediately steps in front of Mash, pleading with the officers to spare his son's life, while offering all their meager savings. With a flick of his wrist, Brad unleashes a sharp kinetic spell that forcefully slams the elderly man hard against the stone wall. Regro groans in deep agony, sliding down the cracked wall, yet he still weakly gestures for Mash to run away and save himself. Mash's deadpan expression shifts slightly, a cold, unyielding fire igniting within his dark eyes, as he steps forward slowly. Brad chuckles darkly at the boy's defiance, raising his high-tier wand to cast Nalcos, a deadly storm of homing energy blades. To everyone's absolute bewilderment, Mash casually slaps the first incoming magical blade away with the back of his bare hand. Like an elite table tennis player, Mash rapidly bats away every single high-tier magical projectile with effortless, lightning-fast physical reflexes. Brad's jaw completely drops in utter disbelief as he watches his most lethal offensive spell reduced to a joke. Mash instantly closes the distance with a single explosive step, leaving a deep, shattered crater in the floorboards. He grabs Brad's ancient, highly revered magical wand and effortlessly snaps it clean in half like a dry wooden twig. Terrified for his life, Brad falls backward onto the ground, frantically scrambling away from the walking physical anomaly. Mash slowly raises his massive leg and positions his heavy boot directly over the elite officer's pale face. Realizing raw power cannot beat this boy, Brad quickly halts his panic and proposes a high-stakes tactical compromise. He offers to entirely overlook Mash's illegal existence if the boy infiltrates the prestigious Easton Magic Academy. Brad states that Mash must achieve the absolute highest rank of Divine Visionary, allowing them to split the immense power and wealth. If Mash refuses the deal, Brad warns that the entire Magic Bureau will hunt both him and his adoptive father down until they are dead. Looking back at his injured father, Mash agrees to the pact, resolving to smash through the magical society with his bare fists. Brad hands him a bottle of black ink, instructing him to paint a fake lightning mark on his cheek before entering the school grounds. Mash takes the ink, knowing he is about to step directly into a viper's nest filled with elite, arrogant mages. As dawn breaks, Mash stands before the colossal imposing Gothic gates of Easton Academy, his fake mark freshly painted. Countless elite student candidates stare at him coldly, completely unaware that a boy with zero magic is about to shatter their entire world. Suddenly, the stone floor begins to rumble violently as a massive ancient magical eye opens within the Academy's central tower. The Grand Proctor steps forward, unleashing a powerful detection spell that sweeps directly toward Mash's painted face. If the detection spell uncovers the fake mark, Mash will be executed instantly right on the Academy grounds. The golden energy washes directly over his face, triggering a sudden, violent screech from the tower's massive eye. The screeching from the tower's massive eyes suddenly stops as Mash casually wipes the golden residue from his fake lightning mark. Elite Magic Officer Brad watches from the shadows, his jaw dropping as he realizes the boy didn't use a single shred of mana to survive. With his painted-on mark intact, Mash steps firmly across the threshold of Easton Magic Academy to face his destiny. Inside, thousands of elite applicants gather in the grand auditorium, their robes shimmering with prestigious ancestral energy. At the front of the stage stands Proctor Lucci, an arrogant, highly gifted mage who smiles down at the crowd with utter disdain. Mash takes his place in the back row, completely ignoring the condescending stares while chewing thoughtfully on a hidden cream puff. Lucci steps forward and announces that the first phase of the examination will filter out the weak and worthless instantly. With a swift flick of his wrist, Lucci summons the levitating test papers, making them fly violently toward each student's desk. The applicants instantly panic as the enchanted papers scramble their letters, requiring precise magical decoding to read. Mash stares down at his moving text, his expression completely flat as the letters try to dance away from his vision. Realizing he cannot use magic to reorganize the letters, Mash simply glares at the paper with absolute physical intimidation. Out of sheer primal fear of his aura, the enchanted ink lines up perfectly into standard, legible English text on its own. Mash quickly fills out the answers using a regular pen, pressing so hard that he breaks 3 wooden desks in the process. Proctor Lucci notices the destruction and glares at Mash, deeply offended by the student's complete lack of elegant magical decorum. For the second phase, Lucci teleports the entire group to the entrance of a colossal, shifting enchanted maze. The Proctor explains that the maze is alive and will actively trap anyone who does not possess high-level navigation spells. The timer begins, and the noble students immediately unleash complex tracking magic to find the optimal path through the labyrinth. Mash stands at the starting line for a moment, looking at the complex layout before deciding on a much simpler approach. He takes a deep breath, crouches down, and charges straight forward directly into the solid stone wall ahead of him. A massive explosion of dust and debris rocks the entire exam grounds as Mash effortlessly smashes through the first wall. Without slowing down his pace for a single second, he runs in a perfectly straight line, demolishing wall after wall. Other applicants stop in their tracks, paralyzed with fear as a human juggernaut rips through the labyrinth beside them. Watching from a scrying crystal orb, Proctor Lucci leaps out of his chair, screaming in absolute horror at the complete disregard for rules. Within less than a minute, Mash emerges at the finish line, completely uninjured and covered only in a light layer of gray dust. Lucci teleports directly to the finish line, pointing his golden wand menacingly at Mash's face while trembling with rage. The Proctor declares that brute force is unacceptable and threatens to disqualify Mash on the spot for lacking magical talent. Mash merely blinks, completely unimpressed by the magical pressure that is currently causing other students to drop to their knees. Suddenly, a powerful booming voice echoes through the courtyard, instantly dispelling Lucci's aggressive magical aura. Headmaster Wahlberg, an old man with a massive white beard and eyes full of deep wisdom, slowly walks toward the scene. Lucci bows instantly, stammering apologies to the Grand Headmaster while trying to justify his extreme anger toward Mash. Wahlberg raises a single hand to silence the proctor, his gaze locked entirely on Mash's expressionless face. The headmaster states that the final interview will take place immediately in his private chambers to test Mash's true worth. In an instant, Mash finds himself sitting in a high-backed leather chair inside a massive, book-filled office. Sitting across from him, Wahlberg explains that Easton Academy only accepts those who possess a strong soul and noble purpose. Without warning, the headmaster unleashes a terrifying spell, summoning a massive ethereal demon blade that floats directly above Mash. Wahlberg demands to know what Mash would do if an innocent person's life was threatened by a power far greater than his own. Mash does not hesitate for a fraction of a second, raising his bare hand to intercept the heavy descending demon blade. The magical edge cuts into his palm, but Mash grips the blade tighter, refusing to flinch as blood begins to drip down his wrist. He quietly states that he would simply smash anyone who hurts his family or friends, regardless of how powerful their magic is. With a sudden surge of physical power, Mash shatters the entire ethereal demon blade into billions of harmless sparkling pieces. Headmaster Wahlberg smiles warmly, deeply moved by the boy's absolute purity, courage, and ultimate spirit of self-sacrifice. The headmaster officially welcomes Mash to Easton Magic Academy, acknowledging that he might be the one to change their corrupt world. Mash takes the letter and bows politely, his mind already drifting toward the delicious cream puffs served in the school cafeteria. However, as he steps out into the main corridor, a dark, menacing shadow watches him intently from the high ceiling beams. A sinister smile creeps across the hidden figure's face as a heavy gravity field begins to silently warp the stone walls around Mash. The heavy gravity field continued to distort the air around Mash as he stood completely still in the stone corridor. Rather than panicking under the crushing pressure, the Magicless boy slowly reached into his school cloak. He calmly pulled out a fresh, golden-brown cream puff and took a gentle bite amid the magical chaos. The sudden absurd display caused the hostile pressure to immediately dissipate into thin air. The next morning brought Mash directly into his first formal academic lectures within Easton Academy. Trouble found him almost immediately in the form of Lloyd Cavell, a wealthy student who demanded absolute subservience. Backed by his father's massive political influence, Lloyd routinely forced lower-ranked students to carry his heavy books. When Lloyd threw his heavy textbooks onto Mash's desk, Mash simply stared at them without blinking. Infuriated by the utter lack of compliance, Lloyd used his wand to secretly slice Mash's homework into shreds. Pieces of parchment drifted to the floor like snow, revealing the deep malice of the school's elite faction. Mash slowly rose from his seat, his gaze locked entirely on the smug blonde aristocrat. Before anyone could utter a defensive spell, Mash grabbed Lloyd by the hair and slammed his face into the wooden desk. The entire classroom erupted into terrified screams as the school's social order was instantly shattered. The commotion immediately summoned the vice principal, a corrupt administrator who threatened Mash with instant execution. Unmoved by the authority figure's loud threats, Mash calmly began burying the vice principal into the floorboards. Only the timely intervention of the benevolent headmaster Wahlberg saved the school officials from further physical ruin. Rather than expelling Mash, the wise headmaster recognized his raw justice and quieted the administrative outrage. A few days later, the annual Easton Academy broom racing match commenced over the school's vast outer fields. Mash stood on the starting line holding a standard wooden broom, completely incapable of making it levitate. As the starting whistle blew, Mash simply hopped onto the broom and launched himself forward with an immense leg jump. To maintain flight, his legs began kicking back and forth at an utterly impossible, blur-inducing speed. The elite magic students watched in complete disbelief as a boy literally kicked his way past their fastest brooms. Mash crossed the finish line in record time, setting a new historical milestone through sheer physical exertion. However, the peaceful academic interval was cut short by the sudden arrival of a highly dangerous adversary. Lance intercepted Mash in a secluded rocky valley, seeking to claim his rare school coins by force. Driven by a fierce desire to protect his sister from the magic police, Lance brooked absolutely no compromises. With a swift flick of his silver wand, Lance unleashed his signature high-tier gravity spell upon the area. The ground instantly collapsed under a crushing force that multiplied the local gravity tenfold. Mash braced his massive leg muscles against the downward pull, refusing to let his torso touch the earth. Lance intensified the spell, launching massive boulders downward to crush his stationary opponent completely. Mash met the falling rocks with a rapid volley of bare-fisted punches, turning them into harmless gravel. The gravity prodigy widened his eyes in absolute horror as his ultimate defensive magic was effortlessly broken. Breaking free from the gravity zone, Mash sprinted forward with a speed that defied human perception. He appeared instantly in front of Lance, delivering a devastating knee strike straight into the mage's midsection. Lance crashed heavily into the dirt, his wand slipping away from his trembling fingers. Mash stood over him, but instead of taking the coins, he offered a quiet gesture of mutual understanding. Moved by Mash's genuine lack of cruelty, Lance accepted the hand and recognized a powerful new ally. Their brief moment of camaraderie was suddenly shattered by a chilling, unnatural drop in the temperature. A massive, sinister shadow began stretching across the valley floor from the top of the canyon cliffs. From the darkness above, a glowing white porcelain mask emerged, signaling the arrival of the elite Magia Lupus faction. The glowing white porcelain mask descended from the dark rafters of the corridor, casting a long skeletal shadow across the stone floor. Multiple hooded elite mages stepped out from the surrounding darkness, their wands humming with dangerous violet energy. Mash stood entirely unfazed by the sudden ambush, calmly unwrapping a fresh golden cream puff from a small paper bag. Without warning, the first Magia Lupus assassin lunged forward, casting a high-speed torrent of piercing ice spikes. Mash casually took a bite of his food, while raising his left leg to completely shatter the oncoming ice into harmless snow. The attacking mage gasped aloud as his ultimate spell was effortlessly pulverized by a single leather shoe. Two more elite mages joined the fray, unleashing a combined shockwave of localized seismic gravity fields. Mash immediately dropped into a deep, perfectly balanced squat to anchor his massive body against the gravitational pull. With an explosive burst of speed, he sprinted right through the distortion field, leaving a trail of broken concrete behind him. He grabbed both elite mages by their collars simultaneously, knocking their heads together with a resonant, metallic thud. The remaining low-tier members of the faction scattered in panic, leaving the pathway to the inner chamber wide open. Mash walked forward deliberately, kicking open the massive iron-reinforced doors of the Magia Lupus headquarters. Sitting upon a throne of interconnected wooden parts, Abel Walker looked down coldly, his fingers twitching like a master puppeteer. Abel claimed that those without exceptional magical talents were merely trash destined to be controlled by the elite. To demonstrate his authority, he gestured broadly, summoning a dozen giant marionettes armed with jagged, lethal blades. Mash slowly rolled up his school uniform sleeves, exposing forearms hardened by years of intense weightlifting. The giant wooden puppets surged forward in unison, their jointed limbs clacking loudly against the marble floor. Mash sidestepped the first swinging blade with millimeter precision, his hair ruffling from the sheer wind pressure. He drove a massive right hook directly into the chest of the lead puppet, completely obliterating its reinforced wooden torso. Moving like a whirlwind, he grabbed the severed arm of the broken marionette and used it as a makeshift club against the others. Abel watched in utter horror as his prized, spell-infused creations were reduced to a pile of simple firewood within seconds. In a final act of desperation, Abel unleashed his ultimate magic, attempting to transform Mash himself into a helpless string doll. The magical threads tightly wrapped around Mash's limbs, attempting to forcibly lock his joints and freeze his movements. Mash simply flexed his massive chest and arm muscles, instantly snapping the ancient magical bindings like cheap sewing thread. He walked up to the trembling faction leader, gently tapping him on the forehead to knock him out cleanly. Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped to absolute zero as the grand stained glass ceiling shattered into a million pieces. From the dark vortex above emerged Selwar, a high-ranking assassin from the notorious underground syndicate Innocent Zero. Selwar announced that the era of peaceful magic academies was officially over and that Mash was a target to be eliminated. The assassin conjured a barrage of dense, black diamond projectiles, firing them at supersonic speed straight toward Mash. Mash stood his ground, moving his hands so fast, they became an invisible blur to slap every single projectile out of the air. Selwar narrowed his glowing eyes, stunned that a mere student could react to the speed of his dark magic. The assassin summoned an enormous, world-ending dark magical sphere that threatened to collapse the entire academy building. Realizing the danger to his friends and the school, Mash took a deep breath and prepared his ultimate physical technique. He unleashed a colossal, supersonic straight punch that generated a shockwave capable of tearing through the atmosphere. The sheer air pressure from the punch collided with the dark magical sphere, completely dispersing the spell into nothingness. The residual wind pressure slammed into Cell War, breaking his magical staff and forcing him to retreat into the shadows. Silence finally returned to Easton Academy as the morning sun began to rise over the horizon, painting the sky in gold. Headmaster Wahlberg stepped into the ruined hall, officially announcing that Mash's revolutionary strength had earned him the title of Divine Visionary. The entire student body gathered to cheer for the boy who proved that muscles could overcome any magical discrimination. Sitting on a bench with his friends, Mash took a long, satisfying bite of a giant cream puff, fully at peace with the world.